We're at Fulbeck in Lincolnshire for the first time in many years for round 6 of the Awning Company's Super 1 British Karting Championships. 2 cadet classes, Harry Thompson leads them both. 2 X30 classes, Angus Fender leads in the junior category. And 3 Rotax classes including juniors, where Miles Apps is finally back in the game. In Army Cadet, a controversial end to the race at Bmore Park a few weeks ago resulted in the championship lead of Harry Thompson being cut to just 5 points.
Keneally second, Simmons, Taylor, Wilkinson, Rees, and they've all got contact! Thompson has come together with Keneally!
The decision to bring out a Battenberg rather than a red flag, which would have seen the result going back to the end of the previous lap, and the drivers who crashed after being loaded from behind finishing in positions towards the front of the field rather than the back of the field, has caused some letter writing to the MSA to complain about the decision by the official on the day. The clerk of the course who made the decision was Ken Potter, and earlier I spoke to Ken about his reasons behind the decision and 2 of the team managers whose drivers were involved in the incident. Ken, we've just been having a look at the Army Cadet incident at the end of the race at Bmore Park. Battenberg flag came out instead of a red flag. Just tell us a little bit about why these decisions are made, how it came about that a Battenberg was thrown instead of a red flag.
Well, each incident is judged on its own merit. In this case, we had a cart-off with an experienced clerk, and the decision was made that it was quite safe. All these decisions are made on safety. It was quite safe to call for a Battenberg flag, which is to neutralise the race, while we assess whether we need to take any further action.
And of course, earlier on in the meeting, we had 2 instant red flag incidents, because that was carts that were hitting the barriers pretty hard, 1 cart flipping over, of course. In those instances, of course, that is an instant red flag, obviously.
Yeah, as I said, all these decisions are primarily made on safety grounds. When you see a driver out of a cart, looking in distress on the circuit, on the tarmac, then yes, it's an instant decision to call a red flag and get attention. In the case of the Battenberg, it was clearly felt, and I think the right decision, that to neutralise the race was the right thing to do.
Of course, that was a low-speed incident round a hairpin as well, wasn't it? And you had Martin Bean, another experienced clerk, on the scene very quickly, able to assess it.
Yeah, that's correct. And when we did the debrief after, Martin confirmed that at no point did he consider calling for a red flag. The driver was fine, didn't show any signs of being distressed, and therefore Battenberg, in my opinion, was the correct call.
And of course, then the checker flag came out, and that's because pretty much we ran out of time. So it was a checker flag under the Battenberg.
Yeah, absolutely. There was no chance, because of the position of the cart, of bringing the Battenberg in and going back to racing. So we actually finished the race under the Battenberg flag.
Damn big incident at the end of the Army Cadet race last time. It affected one of your drivers, Bray Keneally, obviously. Battenberg flag versus red flag. What was your view of the incident and the decision and why it was made, whether another decision should have been made? What was your view of it?
I think it's difficult to say red or Battenberg. I mean, looking at the incident, he wasn't in a dangerous place with regards to other carts hitting him. I think the Battenberg was probably sufficient, if I'm totally honest with you. I think the red wasn't really needed. I'm not sure there was an urgent injury or anything that was needed to be attended. I think the Battenberg was sufficient enough to run the race. So.
Disappointing, I guess, from your driver's point of view, from Bray's point of view, because he was running pretty well, and of course the red comes out, goes back a lap, keeps his position. He ended up down the field, of course, but I suppose you've got to take the positives out of the weekend. From your point of view, your team doing pretty well this season, to say the least.
Yeah, I mean, from an ideal situation from Bray's side of it and also Alex's side of it, it would have been ideal to go back a lap, but you know that's how the racing is, and that's what happens. Unfortunately, you know, we have them incidents throughout the year, whether it benefits us sometimes and it hurts us in other times. You have to take them, the rough with the smooth. I do think the Battenberg, looking at the footage, I think the Battenberg was the right call.
I think first thing to comment on is a safety issue, where obviously Harry Thompson was injured and stranded in quite a vulnerable place of the track on the exit of the second hairpin. We were very surprised that they didn't immediately red flag it, because it was obvious he wasn't able to get out of the kart. He'd actually dislocated his shoulder. So the decision to run the remainder of the race under the Battenberg flag came as a bit of a surprise, I think, to everyone. And after speaking to Ken after the race, he told us his reasons. I wasn't totally satisfied with them, so yes, I did write a letter to the MSA and thought that under safety grounds the race should have been red flagged.
I guess you could have appealed his decision. I think you've got 30 minutes to do that. What's the actual purpose of writing a letter, though? You can't get the race overturned, can you, or can you?
No, we weren't aiming to change the result of the race. I mean, like you say, that would have had to have been done with an appeal, which, at the time we didn't think was possible. We spoke with the MSA steward and he didn't think it was possible to appeal that decision. So the purpose of the letter to the MSA was really just to highlight them of anything that we feel isn't safe. And we had a meeting with the MSA on Saturday at Bmore, and they want to work more closely with the team, so they're wanting the feedback from us, and that was the purpose.
And I think when we were talking yesterday, you were talking about Harry was injured, and I accept that Harry was injured in this case. But you'll remember back in the day when the red flags, going back years before the 75% rule came in, it was pretty much a standard situation. Lap 1, lap 2, you're leading the race, you get punted off. You feign injury to get a red flag, then all of a sudden you're better again, and then you're taking part in the restart. Now the MSA addressed that and came up with the 75% rule. If you're the reason the red flag comes out, then you can't take part in the restart. That's the rule they brought out to try and get around this. It doesn't impact, of course, on situations where the race is 75% in this case, of course, anything over 9 minutes effectively, although as I understand it from the timekeeper this morning, the clerks could call a race after 25% of the race distance, but that would be very rare, only if you're running out of time at the end of the day, I guess. But in this case it was past that 9 minute time. Is the situation of people feigning injury, and I'm not suggesting in this case that was the case, I know you've said that Harry was injured, is that something that the MSA needs to look at as a potential issue? Because drivers at the top level of the sport know when they see that timer counting down to 3 minutes and below, any incident, if they feign injury, if they do get a red flag, then it goes back a lap. Obviously, a Battenberg changes that. So is there a case for arguing that the Battenberg should almost always come out unless it's an obvious, somebody getting flipped out of a cart or something? Is that something you think the MSA need to look at?
I think it goes back to consistency with the rules, and you're right. Obviously, if there's a red flag, sort of, let's say at the start of the race, like there was at Butmore, the driver that scores the red flag can't take part in the race, and I think that's fair enough, and that does stop people faking injuries. In this situation, it was a bit different. I mean, Harry's not the sort of driver that would do that anyway. He'd be the first to get going as soon as he could. But having said that, probably do need to look at the way the regs are written, because there is a lack of consistency, and obviously if there was a red flag, the result would have been taken from the lap before, which would have had a very different impact. But just to go back to what I originally said, our main issue was on the safety aspect. The result is obviously disappointing as well, but I think first and foremost we've got to look at the safety of the drivers, and if you've got a driver stranded who's quite badly injured in the middle of the track, I think a red flag is the obvious decision.
Always good to start a show with a bit of controversy. Different people, different opinions. It has been argued in the past that the only opinion that matters is mine. usually by me. I would like to say this, the Battenberg flag is the most underrated and underused flag in karting, and I'd like to see more of it, please. Thank you very much. We're back after the break with the first of the race action. Don't go away.